Hello and welcome everyone to this MyBlend Roundtable. My name is Jeff Gerlach and I am an instructional designer with the MyBlend program at Michigan Virtual University. And today our topic question is going to be, how should the physical environment of a blended classroom be designed? We put together a great group of people to be on a panel today to talk about this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. So to start us off, tell us who you are, where you're from, and a brief overview of how you've worked with learning spaces. Let's go ahead and start with Erin. I'll put you on the spot.
Okay. My name's Erin Maston, and I teach up here in Boyne City. I teach first grade, and probably in the last couple of years, we've really tried to, in first grade, give our students a lot of choice as to the space that they learn in. You know, whether it be in a small group on the carpet, or standing at a table, or sitting in a comfortable chair. Those are just kind of where we've started getting our classroom set up to give students a lot of choice.
Awesome. Tara?
My name is Tara Maynard. I teach 8th grade math in Zeeland, and this whole blended thing started when I started flipping my classroom about a year and a half ago. And with that came videos to watch, explorations to do for students, and my big piece is I don't care where or when things are accomplished before they get to class, as long as they get done. So I have students that will watch videos and do their reading on the school bus on the way to school. I'll have students that want to do things in class because home situations don't allow them to get a lot done, so they'll quietly go off to the side, plug in earphones, and watch videos and take notes that way. You know, just being, I guess, freeing to let them do it when and where it's best for them is kind of how I've started things the last year and a half.
Okay. So intentionally designing spaces for that kind of choice seems to be something that's important for that kind of encouraging that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Stanley. I'm a high school teacher at Fraser Public Schools, and we are a one-to-one iPad district in Fraser. So not only am I teaching English, I'm also in the role of a 21st century teacher. And what that does is I'm working a lot with staff members on how to implement technology into their own instructional design. So that's pretty cool. I not only get to work with my own students, but I also get to see how teachers are changing their own learning environments as well too, and really learning how students choose to learn. So that's a pretty neat experience. The one class that I am teaching is a hybrid course. So it's, I guess, where we would define it blended learning as well, where students don't always have to be in my classroom. So when we're talking physical environment, we're basically talking anywhere and everywhere, kind of along the lines of what Tara was already talking about. Learning is happening everywhere, and it's truly happening in our class that way. All of my material is on our learning management system. We use Blackboard, and most of our face-to-face class time is sort of more of a review than anything else. Time when it's, okay, the students really need to come into my classroom so that we can have a conversation. But what we're doing is just basically going over the teaching that they've already seen. So it's really changed my entire philosophy of what I think teaching and learning should look like. It's pretty exciting.
Awesome, awesome. So something I wanted to give you guys a chance to do is, if you had any questions about what everyone just said, so if you heard something that was interesting that you want to know a little bit more about, to give you a chance to ask a question of each other, if you wanted to, and then if not, we'll move on to some other questions. But I wanted to give you that opportunity to kind of interact with each other and ask about what was just said by everybody.
I have a question, actually. Erin, you're a one-to-one district, right?
Yes. Yep. K-12.
are you first grade? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Your students take their iPads home?
The first year we had them, they took them home pretty consistently, and it was based on grade level. So kindergarten and first grade usually just took them home on the weekend,
Okay.
and then it kind of, as they got older, they were able to do more and more. So fourth grade, they take them home every night, and then from fourth grade on up, I think it's pretty much every day. What we're finding out with our particular iPads is that the amount of screen damage that we're getting is kind of, it's increasing because the iPads are getting older. We are using them more because we're getting more comfortable with them as teachers, and implementing, lessons or just general daily use is increasing. And so having to send them out with a cracked screen is about a week that the iPad is out. And so I think for first grade, we're kind of feeling that the responsibility piece is not up there. Maybe for parents and students, they're just not, we're not benefiting as much having them out of the classroom and going home as we need them in class, I guess, more so. And so we struggle with that decision. It might be the person that we're using to replace the screens. It might be the quality of the screen that's getting replaced. I don't know. But if I had to choose, I'd love to have them take them home every day. But I don't, I need them more in class to do what we're doing in class than practicing at home. But I think that looks different at every grade level. So that's just first grade.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was a huge proponent at first of, get them home every day. These kids are going to use them. And I think they do. I just, for what we're doing in class, I can't have 20 of my kids using an iPad and then 4 of them doing something else. Convenience and keeping up. It's like, you've lost your book.
Right, it's your new textbook, exactly.
So it's hard.
Well, we had a new person join us, so I want to introduce. Is it Sandra or Sandra?
Same difference.
Okay, Sandra, could you tell us who you are, where you're from, and kind of your connection to physical learning spaces?
Okay, so my name is Sandra Sawaya, and I'm in the Educational Psychology and Educational Technology program, PhD program at Michigan State. And in connection to creating physical spaces for learning, I've had the opportunity to work at the design studio at the College of Education for the past year and a half almost. And in that in the design studio, we worked on creating a learning space where we bring in online students and face-to-face students to synchronously interact during a class session. So instead of having, face-to-face interactions and then online interactions kind of separated, we actually worked on bringing these two groups of students together, and this was done. This was mediated through different technologies, through video conferencing tools like Google Hangouts, through iPads, Zoom sessions, so on and so forth.
And I was really interested to find out about that work. It's a little bit different than how a lot of K-12 teachers think about blended learning, but it's a really interesting concept. What are some of the things that you focused on in to, I guess, improve the experience for both online and face-to-face learners?
Well, I guess there were two dual things that we focused on. So the first part was trying to match the pedagogical approach of the instructor with setting up the classroom environment. So, for example, we had instructors that preferred small group conversations. So we had to set up the class in such a way that we can have a group of 2 face-to-face students and 2 online students it's like separate groups of, these blended groups with face-to-face and online students be able to interact together at the same time in a large classroom setting. So we had Google Hangout stations in order to minimize interference between the two groups. So we focused on matching the pedagogical approach with the setting up the technology, but also we focused on maximizing or enhancing the experience of the online student in this face-to-face classroom environment. So, for example, we realized that audio took on much more weight than video. So a lot of the times, the online students would, if the video wasn't working, they were fine with it. They just turned their cameras off or just not focus on the video stream, and they were just they paid more attention to what was coming through their microphones. So sorry, through their earphones. So we had to focus more on trying to get the audio to work properly rather than the video. So that the video component was a plus, was a benefit, but we had to focus on minimizing any noise feedback, troubleshooting just in time. So that was the second aspect that we focused on.
And I think, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead. I was gonna, Sandra, I'm like blown away by what you're talking about. I think this is very, very cool. First off, I think you guys are doing some really awesome stuff over at MSU. Went to a great conference in November that you guys hosted, and I thought it was fantastic. But what you're talking about right now, the audio and the video, I've actually found it quite different in high school itself, because I've done both. We've done podcasts and we've done screencasts and everything, and I found it is much more of a struggle to get my high school students to listen to the audio, whereas if it's a video, they'll have absolutely no problem seeing it. So I'd be interested in seeing like when that switches over, to when our students would go, okay, cool, yeah, I'm much more into listening rather than just viewing themselves.
Interesting.
With middle school students, I'll just comment real quick. The videos that I've created, I asked about, do you want my face in it or not? Mm-hmm. And they most often say they don't.
Really?
Yeah, they don't, which I'm like, I'm fine with that. I was just playing around with different apps and, different software, and what worked easiest for me, what worked easiest for them, and I gave them different ones, and they said, honestly, that doesn't make it or break it. I don't need to see your face. I need to see you working out a problem. And with teaching math, that makes total sense.
Sure.
They wanted the workflow to be easier, the pen, the stylus, that kind of stuff. And there were times that they would say like the audio would cut out, and as long as they could follow what I was physically doing, they were okay with that. Cool. So just something interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
In my first grade class, I flipped my math curriculum, and so I created different stations, and one of the stations was, going and getting on to Educreations and listening to my video explaining the worksheet. And I really had to teach them how to go back and listen for understanding, and that was a major learning point that I totally passed over when I decided to do this. I didn't think about having to teach them how to listen for information.
For sure.
And that was like, whoops. that would be helpful. You're going to need to know how to do that. Just assuming that it would come natural. Oh, I didn't understand. I'll go back and listen again. But if you have small children, if any of you have small children, you know that they don't listen the first time usually. So again and again, I thought the video would be great for them to go back, but I had to teach them. They'd come up and say, I don't understand. Well, did you listen to my video? Yeah. Did you watch my video and see what I was doing? Yeah. We'll go back and try it again.
Right.
And so that, it's obviously not there in first grade. So
I love it. I've had it where my students will go, you talked really fast in that video. I'm like, so you couldn't keep up with notes or anything like that? They're like, yeah, I had to write really quick. I'm like, well, videos are really cool because there's a pause button, and you can go backwards and hear what I had to say. Oh, I guess I didn't think about that.
I will put that in my video. Okay, now hit pause
Yeah.
and this, and do this, or go back now, and you have to really. I try to keep my videos short because I've read that you really don't want a video over 5 to 7 minutes, and so I try to keep it very short, and that helps. But sometimes I do find myself talking too. Yeah.
So something that's a common theme here is like I hear the play and the pause of these videos, and then students asking questions all over the place. And these are I envision you all running around the room like crazy people, assisting in a bunch of different things at all simultaneously. So something that I'm interested in is how zones are created within a classroom to kind of accommodate those that are kind of working on their own. Some collaborative groups form. Sometimes their groups are formed and then they break apart and then they form back together again in a different configuration. How do you create these zones? What does your classroom look like to allow students to kind of facilitate this kind of learning?
I think it's pretty easy in the elementary room because we're all in there all day long together. So for me, I have, like I was talking about, lots of options. I have a table that is taller so that they can stand there, and kids will kind of freely either go there or they'll decide that they want to play right there or work right there. I try to just have it so that there's no names on the desks. So we talk about at the beginning of the year that it's not your desk, it's just a desk. That if you want to work there, you can. As long as nobody's sitting there, that's a free place to work. And as far as trying to find like a quiet zone or a small space that a kid can kind of cling to, for me, for little kids, I find like, I have this half tent that's like on the wall, and that is like this little nook that they can all go and sit in and do whatever they whatever they need to do, or just a quiet space, trying to make it feel homey, I guess, and section different things off so that they can kind of snuggle into a spot. The younger kids really like that.
Tara, what does it look like at the middle school level?
My classroom right now is probably under construction and a mess, but in the school year, I have my students usually in groups of 4. I've tried groups of 6, kind of to start class each day, and I go from assigning them seats at the beginning of the school year just to learn names and to figure out class dynamics, to letting them choose once we get into the flow and once we kind of figure out what class is all about. So those groups of 4 is usually where they start with their conversations and they start with their discussions, and then they kind of break off. So if they aren't prepared when they get to class, they either go sit off to the side. I have a little island in my room that has a sink and a drinking fountain in it, and kind of to one side of that it's smaller. It's just an extra teacher's desk for when I have student teachers, and then a lot of kids like to sit on the floor if they have to go watch their video, or they'll go out in the hallway, plug in headphones and watch their video out there or do their reading to prepare. And then the groups, they kind of, after a couple months, after 6 weeks, they figure out who they might work with best, and it seems like they kind of gravitate towards, these are going to be my plow through the questions or the activity. I work a lot faster. They kind of clump together. So it's more or less they start, they talk, they then move to where they're more comfortable for the activity or the work that they're doing. And then some of them are starting to watch a video again at the end of class, so they might go, again, plug headphones in. I encourage them to put headphones in when they're listening to the video for that purpose of, like Aaron said, listening for understanding, not just going through the motions. The other part of my class is quick checks that they take after every lesson, just a short assessment, 4 to 5 questions. So when they're doing those, a lot of them will put up binders or put up books that I have kind of a class set of books that they still like to look at the physical textbook when they're going through problem sets. So they'll put those up to kind of space themselves off from people around them. Those of them that like to do that in a more quieter setting, again, they'll go in the hallway or they'll sit off to a corner. That's one thing that I'm trying to do this summer is think about other furniture than my traditional desks and hard chairs. You know, I've had exercise balls in the past and need to get a few of those back in my classroom. And I guess it's a little more rigid in the middle school. I don't have the tent. I don't have some of that fun stuff that's in that elementary setting more than what you see in the middle school right now.
It's interesting using, so they use books as kind of barriers,
Yeah.
so they can be in close proximity to one another, but they kind of seems like that gives like a limited privacy, right? Or at least a message to everyone else, don't bother me. And then also you mentioned the headphone use, and kind of get into your own focus space, kind of tune out everything else. So that's
Right.
interesting. What would you mentioned getting new stuff in there. You mentioned the exercise balls. Like if you could design a piece of furniture, or you could design whatever, what's lacking in your space?
I've actually seen them. I just need to get them. Steelcase made them. They're like these cylinders, and they have the exercise ball on the bottom. Have you seen those at all? It's like a cylinder cushion. It's the size of a seat, and then the bottom of them is just like a little bit of an exercise ball, so the kid can move around on it, but they're sitting, so they can move. They're soft. They just came out with them a little bit ago. I guess it's the seating piece. I would love bean bags as well. I don't think I need to design anything new. I just need that more. I can go plop in a space, listen to my video, take my notes, kind of thing. I just need to get those things in my classroom.
So it's like it's an exercise ball with like back support or something?
No,
or...
it's a picture a cylinder.
Okay, I got it.
A cylinder that's got kind of a squishy feeling around it, and then on the bottom of it, it's just a little bit of a exercise ball. It's just, you know, like those half exercise balls, they're called Bosus. It's just on the bottom so they can wiggle just a little bit.
So it's kind of like a stool that wobbles.
Yeah,
sort of.
exactly. It is. Yes, it's like a stool. So my geometry brain is in the cylinder shape, but
And the rationale for wanting those would be that so they can move.
Fidgety middle school boys,
Right.
especially, that just need to wiggle all the time. Yeah.
I was going to say, that sounded very much like a middle school thing.
Yeah.
A former 7th grade teacher myself, I really identify with the wiggly boys.
Yeah. Join my first grade room. I talk about wiggle.
Yeah.
Right. It's any room, I think.
We have, in my room, we have the exercise balls. I've got 5 of them, and they're an exercise ball, and they almost have these like udders that come off the bottom, and that keeps them from rolling around. But we also have these stools called Hokey stools. It's HOKKI, or hockey. Here's a picture. Kind of looks like it's like this. The bottom of the stool
is spin all the way around.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
they're not
stationary. Like the bottom is just rounded, so when you sit in it, you can kind of, the kids get to move back and forth. And if you go on this website, just Google them. The whole point behind it, there's tons of brain research behind these stools, and the fact that these kids, in order to focus, that movement really helps them be able to concentrate and to get that energy out and not have it translate into being distracted. Mm-hmm. It lets them keep moving and focus on what the teachers are saying or what they're working on. And I have one little boy in particular that comes to mind that has a real hard time staying focused, and he will, every time he can get out of his seat and grab one of these, that's his thing. And he'll sit on this stool or the exercise ball, he'll sit on his knees and still be able to write or read or do whatever he needs to do, because it works out that he can get that wiggle part going. So.
So, Chris, any any needs at the high school level that you can think, if you could design a piece of furniture or design your room, what would
you know what? I feel like I'd be able to answer this question a little bit better going into this upcoming school year, and I'll tell you why. So I've been teaching a hybrid class the past 3 years, and I'm going back to teaching a full-time face-to-face class this upcoming year. And what'll be interesting is I'm not changing how I teach, though. So what I mean is I'm still going to be doing every single thing that I did in the hybrid environment, where all my teaching is going to be online, and I'm certainly going to have students in many different places all at once. So I'm really trying to think exactly what that's going to look like in my classroom. I'm thinking probably, you know, groups of 4 might be best, but I'm not crazy about like seating charts or anything like that. I think I teach upperclassmen, I teach juniors, and by now they sort of know who they work well with, and I have pretty good relationships with them that I can just sort of look at them and be like, okay, you know you don't work with your slacker buddy really well, so maybe you guys should move around a little bit. But our physical space, you know, when teaching a hybrid class has always been awesome because, say if I make 1 week an online week, that means if you have a specific grade in the class, you don't have to be in my classroom. You can be off campus. You can be at home. You can be sleeping in. And what's great about that is I can then focus. You know, I don't have 30 kids in my classroom anymore. I might only have 8 kids in my classroom. So that allows me to focus and go to every single one of those students and see where they are and see how I can help them and give them extra resources and everything like that. And to be honest with you, I think I'm still going to imagine that in my current classroom next year. Obviously, the students aren't going to be able to leave because it won't be designated the hybrid classroom, but I'm going to be fully aware of where my students are, you know, because of what Blackboard has to offer and where I can see where my students have been. Maybe I'll even make it where if students, you know, are working on their grammar, they can move over to the far right of the classroom, and if students are, you know, working on the novel, they're on the far left of the classroom. And maybe we've got some struggling learners who didn't turn in last week's stuff. Maybe I'd put that in the middle so that A, they could work with each other, and B, I can spend a lot of time working with them. But I know that some of my other students who have a really good focus already can already be in their other places. So I'm kind of excited about this, though, because teaching a hybrid course has really changed my entire philosophy, as I was saying before, where I don't have to be, you know, where I need to slow down because 3 kids out of the 30-plus kids in my classroom aren't getting it. I can let my other students move on and sort of go at their own pace, which is pretty exciting about it. But no, to tell you the truth, I mean, yeah, Tara, maybe I'm with you. I kind of like the beanbag idea. I don't know if every single kid would want that. But I'm a big fan of, you know, just sort of go where you need to go, obviously within the confines of where I am. But if you feel better, you know, doing my work outside and, in the hallway, and you've proven to me that you can handle your stuff, I'm quite okay with that. I feel like I've turned a little crunchy granola hippie that way. But honestly, I mean, as long as you're showing to me that you're learning and that you're understanding all of it, I'm absolutely fine where you sit and where that goes. Less desks, the better, I say.
You know, it's interesting. And I can't remember if Aaron mentioned this specifically, but I know Tara and Chris mentioned the anti-seating chart and flexibility and how students eventually gravitate to where the working relationships that they need to get to with a blended setting where you're kind of, I mean, and it makes sense. They're setting their pace and their course themselves a lot of times. So you would need to give them kind of that latitude. And then, as Chris said, when the slacker buddy is interfering with that process, then that's when you step in and give some gentle guidance that maybe that's not the best relationship for that working environment. I'm really interested in how. Chris talked about removing desks. We talked about the hallway. There's a lot of these these pre-existing traditional structures of these rooms that are in place that we're trying to modify all the time. And Sandra has actually done a lot of thinking about like the intuitiveness of furniture and what it allows for and what it doesn't allow for, and also placement. And I know that it's a big leap away from our K-12 settings, but I think there's a lot to be learned from that. So like, Sandra, could you go into a little bit more? I'm trying to figure out what my actual question to you is here, but like, you get a space that you're inheriting, and you're given the charge of I need to make this better. I need to make this pedagogy work better. What's your thought process in kind of putting things into place to enhance it by the physical surroundings?
We actually are in the process of, so we inherited one of the classrooms at the College of Education in Erickson to design it. So by we, I mean the design studio, to design it and include whatever technology we want in it to better mediate these kinds of interactions that I was talking about before. So one of the big issues that we face and we were trying to solve is how to maximize the potential of the space. So we wanted to be multifunctional. So we had, as I said before, we have different instructors with different pedagogical styles, and we wanted to accommodate the majority of teaching styles. In addition to making the space multifunctional in terms of being able to record lectures for the flipped classroom. And one of the biggest challenges is how to design and lay out the space so that the technology and the actual furniture and everything in the physical aspect of the space does not interfere with each other, with one another. So how many, things like how many workstations do we want to put? Do we want to have 6 workstations or 8 workstations? We had to figure out, the balance between having the advantages of having 6 versus having 8. We have more possibilities for group work, but then we have more smaller groups that might cause more interference. Where to put the microphones? We wanted to capture the entire audio of the room, but at the same time, we didn't want. We wanted to be able to capture the entire audio of the room, but we didn't want. We were at the same time we wanted to capture the audio of one group and one group station. So that's still a work in progress. But we had to consult with different people. Have you heard of the real classrooms in MSU? I forget what they stand for.
I haven't.
They're basically, there's a couple of classrooms that were turned into, they can seat 60 to 80 students, and they were turned into these highly functioning, high technology classrooms, and the people who helped create them had to consider things like what kind of carpeting to put in, what kind of, for the audio and reverb, what kind of, also things like wall color, what's the color that's most suitable for learning, how to design the chairs so that you can foster the chairs and tables, so you can foster instances of group work, but at the same time, if you had a lecture style classroom, that you can easily move everything around and have your traditional type classroom pointed towards the instructor at the front of the class. So these are the challenges that we're currently facing.
That's awesome. Rooms for engaged and active learning.
Yes. Yes.
So that thanks to Dave Goodrich for throwing that my way. Some interesting things there. Recording the room as a whole, and then also in the small groups. Mm-hmm. What's the intentionality for that? Is it for replay purposes? Is it so that people who are remote and people who are face to face can interact? Is it both?
Mm-hmm. It's for both. So one purpose for it is to just archive the lectures and possibly use them for, use them in a flipped model later on if that's what the instructor would prefer. But at the same time, for allowing especially the online students, or if the classroom is set up as a bunch of small groups, to allow for other groups to kind of be able to, even if it's after the fact, be able to listen in and see what's happening in those other group conversations. And it's also one of the things also that we're looking into. There are these lanyards that can follow the instructor and can just record their video as they go around the room. So that's also one of the things in capturing the different group activities that are occurring, but at the same time, because it's such a large classroom, being able to follow the instructor around and capture his or her audio and video.
It's something that randomly occurred to me is like, what if you had every student wearing a lanyard, and what kind of impact would that make on, like, you wouldn't even know what the outcome of that would be. A lot of feedback issues with that, right? And making everyone a moving microphone. But that's capturing is something I think that we've got a lot of people in here that do flip classrooms and think consciously about capturing what happens in a face-to-face environment for later purpose, or for someone who might be watching synchronously who's just not there. So those are some interesting insights, as well as you talked about arranging the groups, the workstations, so that it could be individual workstations, but then also could come back to a more traditional, like, kind of lecture conversation style as well. So thinking about the positioning of the furniture in that way to where it can be used for both. I'm sorry. Did you have one more thing to say?
So in terms of capturing the face-to-face experience, so where the stuff that the design studio is doing that's different than traditional blended or hybrid classroom is we're trying to capture the face-to-face experience to make it comparable. So the online students don't have the opportunity to be in the classroom. So it seems that they're missing out on a lot of the face-to-face experiences. Like, as a face-to-face student, I get to choose if I want to look left or right. I get to decide where I want to focus my attention on. Unfortunately, the online students, because it's almost like a one-way interaction between the technology, or a two-way interaction between the technology and themselves, they aren't really orchestrating or navigating their experiences. So one of the things the reason we try to record the entire lecture, and also we looked into where to place the camera and where to place the cameras. If you want to give control, trying to see if we can somehow give control to the online students about which camera they get to pick, is to try and make their experiences, their learning experiences, as close as possible as those of the online students.
So the guiding factor is trying to create as close to a face-to-face experience as you can for the online students, and that's the driving force for most or all of the innovations then. Awesome. Let me ask this question, because we were talking about those workstations and being flexible for different kinds of pedagogy. Why is flexibility, and this is a question for everyone, why is flexibility an important consideration for your classroom design? I'll go through and we'll do this rapid fire. Erin, I'll put you on the spot again, since I always put you on the spot.
That's all right. No, for me, I'm a learner that needs that flexibility, so why would I assume my students don't need it? That's my logic behind it, is I like having that choice. If I'm given that choice and I choose something that benefits me and helps me learn the best, connect the best with whatever I'm trying to do. So I try to provide that same atmosphere for my students. So the flexibility to go wherever, you know, there's a lot of battles to fight in school. I don't want to fight that battle of sitting, you have to sit at this desk, you have to stay right here, you have to learn in this spot. That's the least of my worries. I just want them to learn. I want them to connect with something. So if they do better sitting on the floor or working with a friend or working by themselves, 90% of the time I don't care where they work. I just want them to do the work or do the learning. That's my main incentive. I want them to have that freedom, that choice, that flexibility like I would want, and I want them to do the job. I don't want to fight that other battle.
All right, Chris, go.
You know what? I mean, the desk towards the front of the room, it's so early 20th century, and sadly we've been doing that for way, way, way too long. Learning is absolutely everywhere, and I'm going to make that cliche statement of we have to stop being that sage on the stage, and we have to be flexible because learning needs to be fluid. Learning isn't just, it stops once the bell rings, you know? And so students need to feel the most comfortable, and they have to discover how they learn. I think that really needs to be our job. And for us to be able to provide many different places of them to just be able to feel comfortable, maybe sitting in the corner of the room or next to a friend or in the beanbag or in that really cool spinny chair that you guys were showing us. That's what learning really needs to look like. And so we have to move out of that and really stick with the 21st century idea of, you know, it's not just going to be I have Mr. Stanley who's going to lecture me for 55 minutes and then move on.
Awesome. Designing for the unpredictable is
fluid.
Such an easy task, right? Be fluid, but yet that opens up a whole new can of worms.
Right.
Tara.
Both what those guys said is absolutely true. I think the other piece you add into it is that you make it the kid's choice. So yes, I don't care where they learn as long as they're doing it, but if you turn it over to them of where do you feel more comfortable doing this? And then when they don't follow through, well, you chose that spot, you chose that piece, and I guess in middle school that's a big piece of getting them ready for high school is you need to make better choices for yourself. And so where do you learn best to try to get them to figure that out, like both of those I said. But just take all of that and make a huge emphasis on the student choice piece and just the comfort. And that's why it has to be flexible. It has to be flexible because kids walk in every day with, you got 30 kids, you've got 30 different situations walking through that door. So you don't know who's super tired and who's not and all that kind of stuff. And so you need that space for them to be the most comfortable they can to try to get something accomplished during that time that you have them.
Well, you know what? I think that this is a great place to leave off for today. I've already extended ourselves over, I think we're north of 40 minutes now, so thanks for letting me lose track of time. I appreciate the conversation. You all are connected now in the planning doc for this. I think I have everyone's Twitter information. I think I have most everybody's Google Plus information. I saw that your chats were going throughout the entire the conversation. Please feel free to use each other as resources, and then anyone else that's watching here, please connect with these people. So I really appreciate the time that you took to talk with us today, and really appreciate the I think we asked a lot more questions than we have answers, but this is the first time I've had a thorough conversation with people about what does flexibility look like, what does how do we design spaces for the kind of thought we're trying to encourage. So I appreciate those thoughts that we had today. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Good conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.